My first movie, it's fairly well known, was a disaster.
It's amazing to me that Fox is the #1 studio in the country because they're all such a bunch of morons.
I was certainly better served on 7 when I had stopped being polite and stopped being interested in hearing anyone's advice.
Why was 7 such a big hit?
You're asking me, Jimmy? I don't know. I never know why.
David Fincher, I think, is one of the most intelligent men I've run into.
David Fincher is a genius.
Honestly, have you ever seen anything like this?
By this stage, because the original Alien became very successful, it had a different meaning than the first Alien had, which was relatively low budget, relatively unknown star, not too much was at risk. Now everything was at risk. This was the franchise, and this was what was going to keep the studio going. This one film.
David Fincher was suggested by head of the studio, actually, Roger Birnbaum.
We had lunch with him at the Fox commissary, David, Walter, and I, and we had not met him before. And he was incredibly impressive. One of the most extraordinary meetings I think I've ever had. This gave us the confidence.
All movies start with one thing, which is a script. And David never had that. When you go through any production, it's difficult, it's hard. I think when you go through your first one without a script, it's even harder.
Did you think, right, this is the ideal project for me?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, I didn't like the script, but I love Alien. So yeah, I signed up naive and went off to Pinewood to be sodomized ritualistically for 2 years.
David wanted a more mechanical concept of this planet that was perhaps at one time had been a very thriving factory kind of a planet.
He had a whole other, quite different take.
You shouldn't trust a first-time filmmaker. They don't know what they're talking about yet. You know, I think that's, and you have to help them in a different way than you help somebody who's been down the gauntlet before. The biggest problem with any kind of reductive franchise thinking is that all stories told by different storytellers are couture. I knew what I was trying to do. I didn't always know how I was going to get there.
David Fincher is a genius, basically, for whom I would jump off London Bridge. I trust him implicitly.
I would never have thought it was his first film.
I think the biggest problem David had was that we never had a concrete draft of a script to go by. And here he is directing his first movie, following in the likes of Ridley Scott and James Cameron.
It's amazing to me that Fox is the '1 studio in the country because they're all such a bunch of morons.
What was the problem?
There's no one problem with a, $65 million fucked up first-time filmmaker. Look, I made a crucial error. I listened to the people who were paying for the movie, and they said the way to go about this is not to work with your friends. The way to go about this is to work with people who've done this time and time and time again. And basically that translates into meet a lot of people who are going to resent you and your age and are not going to want to take instruction from you, and allow them to tell you what you can't do.
I think we all recognized that we had holes in the movie that we needed to fill.
We had a big fight about the ending, too, of Alien 3. This thing where Sigourney goes into the fire, struggling with the beast, was a real last-minute thing. There was a whole big quandary because we'd heard that the Terminator ended with the guy falling into the lead. Same sort of deal. We thought, oh, God. Because the Terminator 2 hadn't come out yet, but we'd heard that it had this thing in it.
The third one for me was just weird. I didn't root for anybody in that picture.
It had so many negatives going for it, like when you have guys in prison that are there for real crimes, like, rape and murder and all of these things. I mean, even Dutton's character had done some horrific things, and you were asked through the movie to be sympathetic to him. Everybody was such a kind of despicable character.
If you ask me what should have been done differently in the film, my only answer could be is to have trusted David Fincher's original vision.
So maybe we can go back to the beginning.
Okay,
to the beginning.
Let's go to the beginning.
I believe you kind of immersed yourself in movies at quite an early age.
I was fairly convinced at the age of 8 that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And yeah, you know, and my parents were, that's really cute.
You made commercials and video clips for a lot of years.
I didn't. I mean, the first thing I did, I worked for an animation company. I got a job working for a local filmmaker who was one of the original sort of triumvirate of omnizoetrope. So it was Francis Coppola, George Lucas, and John Cordy. And I started there as a PA. And then out of that, I went to Industrial Light and Magic, who was hiring.
You've been to ILM?
Yes.
Which is the dream?
Yeah, I've been
dream
through
part.
ILM. You know, I was processed through ILM, and it was an important time in my life. I watched what I think is the single most important thing to understand about the process of making a movie, which is solving 87 problems.
I worked on Return of the Jedi.
And yes, Temple of Doom. That was the first time I really got to be on a set with, you know, somebody like Steven Spielberg.
I was like, I want to know what every motherfucker in the room does. I never wanted to be the guy who was victimized by other people's laziness. It was a great place to learn. And then from there, I went on to directing crappy TV commercials and music videos. I worked on the weekends, and I did, with some friends of mine, we sold an idea to the American Cancer Society that had a fetus smoking a cigarette in utero, which we thought was hilarious. So we gave it to them, they were offended. It was not played on 2 networks, and it caused this whole thing, and then all the networks had to take it. And then 3 other directors and I decided to start our own company, and that was Propaganda. And we went from billing together about $2.5 million a year, and 3 years later we were billing $65–75 million a year, and we had the biggest music video commercial company in Hollywood.
He said, correct me if it's not true, that a lot of people hated Alien 3, but no one hated it more than myself.
Yeah, that's true. So I kind of retreated back to doing television commercials and had no expectation that I would ever be employable again. And I got sent a script, and it was 7.
Do you remember the first time you received the script of 7?
Yeah.
And how long do you need to read it and to say yes?
Well, it wasn't on offer to me. I was sent it by accident. You know, I probably got 40 pages into it and thought, I don't think I can do the old cop and the young cop. I don't know that I have anything to offer that. And I stuck with it, and I got to where John Doe gives himself up.
And I was holding the script, like I knew how many pages were left, and I was going, you can't do this. This is against the rules. So I read to the end, and I thought, this is insane. So I called my agent, and I said, this head in the box ending it's unbelievable. How do I? He said, oh my God, I sent you the wrong draft.
No.
That's the first draft. I said, what? He said, yeah, there's like 11 drafts. Do you want me to say it? And I said, no, this is the one. He goes, well, I mean, I don't think they're gonna make that one. So I said, okay. And I went out and started meeting cast, and I met this long, blonde-haired actor who had just gotten off this movie, Legends of the Fall. And I told him I wanted to make The French Connection. And we hit it off, and then I got a call saying, Brad wants to do it. And I called Arnold Kopelson, and Arnold Kopelson said, you know, would you like to talk to Morgan Freeman? I said, we can't send the script to Morgan. Morgan Freeman's a genius. If we send him the script, he'll never speak to me. You know, he said, no. I sent it to him, he likes it, he wants to talk to you. So I called Morgan Freeman, and he said, I'd love to do this, and we did it.
I was certainly better served on 7 when I had stopped being polite and stopped being interested in hearing anyone's advice. The thing that's going to make this movie work is whether you can make these 2 guys interesting to look at. For my experience of the film was, you know, in my first movie, I was the youngest person for a mile. And I felt it. I felt awkward. And I had a unindicted co-conspirator in Brad that was, you know, he's a director's dream. He's one of those guys who's like, if you can answer the questions when he poses them, why am I doing this and why? And if you can answer them, he wants to serve the director.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
David Fincher, I think, is one of the most intelligent men I've run into. It was one of the most interesting projects for many reasons. One was that it was an intelligent script, which made this terribly gruesome story visually and dramatically acceptable, which never showed the actual act of violence, but only the outcome.
Why was 7 such a big hit?
You're asking me, Jimmy? I don't know. I never know why. There is in us, must be in us, we get some vicarious thrill from watching how the good guys outwit the bad guys.
Some were calling it a classy horror picture.
Really? Bless them.
I have to ask you about the takes issue. You famously have a lot of takes.
My philosophy is you spend $250,000 on a set. You're going to put it on a soundstage, it costs you $5,000 a day. You're going to bring a $150,000 crew in. You're going to bring actors in from all over the world. They're going to come there, and the idea is to get them out as soon as possible. My process is about, I'm going to give you 17, 18, 25 bites at the apple. Now I want to get beyond muscle memory. I want you to know exactly where to sit in that chair. I want you to be really comfortable. When you've done that 15 times, it starts to look like you live there.